In this video, we will build a sample app using Redux in React. So if you have not seen the introduction videos for how to use Redux with React, first go ahead and see them. The links would be provided in the description. And then let's come to building a sample app. So what is the app that we are trying to build? Create a React app using Redux of a fruit shop which shows the stocks, orders and purchases, takes new sales orders and new purchases. The list of fruits available in the shop has been provided. So the store design is that initially we have the list of fruits that the shop has. So these are the 4 fruits. There are no stocks. Stocks is an empty array, orders is an empty array, and purchases is an empty array. The elements in stocks, orders and purchases is a JSON with name and quantity. So the name will be the fruit name and there will be quantity. What are the actions that are defined here? So there is an action buy which updates stocks and purchases. So that's buying fruits. If the fruit does not exist in stocks, inserts a new element. So there is a buy. The type is buy and the payload is the name of the fruit and the quantity. Similar to buy, we have an action sell which updates stocks and orders. So buy updates stocks and purchases, sell updates stocks and orders, removes element from stocks if quantity becomes 0. And similar to buy, it has a type sell and a similar payload, name of the fruit and the quantity. So this is the application we need to develop. So let us go to our VS Code. So in our index.js, remember to have the createStore imported, the provider imported, the reducer that we are creating. So we have just created a very simple reducer and we will now implement the actions in it. But this is with the initial state and just returning it. So for this purpose. And we would also need the browser router. We have initialized the store and we have also given the Redux DevTools field so that we can also check it in the DevTools. Then we have wrapped our main component with provider, store is equal to store, and also with browser router. Why with browser router also? So that we can navigate through, use the router to navigate. We have a main component. The main component, we will create 5 components: stock components, orders, purchases component, new sale component, new purchase component. And then we will have the navbar. And this is the standard design. So we have the navbar. And then for the 5 components, we have just defined the 5. For the 5 routes, we have defined the 5 components. Note, we are not passing any parameters as props here. So why are we not passing parameters as props or anything? Because that we will handle from Redux. Next, we have our reducer.js where we will create our action. And then we have our new purchase, new sale, stocks, orders, and those structures. So where should we start? Let's start with our stocks component. And what should we do in our stocks component? In our stocks component, we need to display all the stocks in a table. So let's start with that. So we can just say import React, component from React. We also will need to import connect. So let's do that. So connect is used to connecting to the Redux store from React Redux. Next, let's define our component. So let's go ahead and do that. Class, let's call it stocks component, extends component. And what do we want to do here? We just want to display the details of stock. So we need to get stocks and we need to display it. So how will we do that? So let's first get our stocks. So let's here export default, and we will use connect map state to props and the stocks component. So now we need to define our map state to props. So const map state to props is equal to, it takes the state, and so while we are displaying the stocks, what do we need from the state? We just need stocks, we don't need the others. So let's map that. Return stocks is state, not stocks. So now that we have defined our map state to props, let's define the render function. So render, and what do we do in render? We will just render the stocks. So return and we can just say h4 stocks. Next, what do we want to do? We can just say this dot props dot stocks. So we will get the stocks in props dot map, and what we can say in map is that each stock st goes to, and we will just create a row for it and display it. So we will just say div class name is equal to row, let's say key is equal to, so we can just use the index here, key is equal to index, now within this we can just display what would be the fields within it. It will have the fruit name and the quantity, so let us just display it. So div class name is equal to, say, column 4, let's put a border, and we can just display st dot name, and the other thing we need to display is st dot quantity. So this should display the stocks for us. So next, once we have created our stocks, let's create our new purchase component. So how do we create our new purchase component? Let's go ahead and do that. So standard, let's just copy our imports if we want to. So this will be new purchase component. So what all do we need to do here? Notice we will need a form here wherein we will have the fruits as a drop down and the quantity as a text field. So that is what we need. So first let's go ahead and define our export default connect map state to props, and what is it? New purchase component. Now what will be map state to props here? Map state to props is state, and what all do we need from the state here? So let's go back and look at it. So we don't need stocks, we don't need orders, we don't need purchases, but we need these fruits to display the which fruit is being purchased. So all we need is return fruits is state dot fruits. So that's our map state to props. Is there an action that we will do here? Yes, we will do a by action. So let's define it. So const by action, it takes a name and quantity, the name of the fruit and the quantity. And what will it return? It will return a JSON. type is by, and what's the payload? Payload is name and quantity is quantity. So that would be a by action. Now that we have defined our these things, let's go back to our component. So now we need a field here. So for that field, we will need a local state. So let's define it, say form. What are the two fields we will need in that state? In that form, name is an empty string and we need quantity. So notice this state that we are creating here is for the purpose of the form and it will never go outside this form. So whatever we will do outside this component, we will do it through Redux. This is just being done to handle the input fields. Next, let's define our render. So we can just get our fruits is equal to this dot props. Let's get our fields for input, name and quantity is equal to this dot state dot form. Once we have gotten that, let's render them. So return div class name is equal to container new purchase. We are in the new purchase form. So new purchase. Now what fields do we want here? What do we want to show here? Div class name is equal to form group. And within that, let's show the label. Label is fruit name. Now we will need to show the drop down. So let's construct the drop down. Select name is name. That's the name. Then we need class name is equal to form control. Value is equal to name, and we need our on change is equal to this dot handle change. We will define the handle change also. So we have defined our select. Now within that we need to create our options. So let's first create an option. Value is equal to empty string. And what's the display in that case? Select fruit. So that's the top display. Next we will use fruit map on fruits. So fruits dot map. And what do we do here? We can just say each fruit goes to, and we create an option. Value is equal to fruit. And we display the fruit. So we have created a drop down. So this will be the drop down. Once we have created this drop down, we will need a text field to take the quantity as input. So let's define that. Div class name is equal to form group. Label is quantity. Next, what do we need to define? We need to define a text field. So let's define an input. Type is equal to text. So this is a text. Name is equal to quantity. What will its value be? Value is equal to quantity. We can also put in a placeholder is equal to enter purchase quantity, and we can also here say it's of a type number instead of a text. We could have called that if we wanted it. And then we need to do on change is equal to this dot handle change. So that's our input. So once we have defined our input, what else do we need here? So after this, we will just need to define a button. So let's do that. Div class name is equal to form group. And within that, we just need a button. So let's put in a button. Class name is equal to btn primary. And what does this button say? New purchase. And what would be the on click of this button? On click is equal to this dot buy, and we just don't pass it. So we now need to define this buy. So let's go ahead and do that. So we now need to define buy is equal to, and we need to define our handle change. So let's start with our handle change. Handle change is equal to, it takes an event, and what does it do? Const current target is equal to e. Let s1 is equal to, we spread the state, and we can just say s1 dot form, and what's the name of the field? Input dot name is equal to input dot value, and this dot set state s1. So the standard handle change that we have for a form. Next, we need to define our buy. So let's get it. Let name comma quantity is equal to this dot state dot form. Now we will need to dispatch the buy action. So this dot props dot dispatch, and what we dispatch? Buy action, and to the buy action, what parameters we pass? Name and quantity. So that's what we have passed. And next, just to display it, so that we will just maybe use this dot props dot history dot push, and we will go to say slash stocks. So slash stocks will just show us our stocks component. So this much should work. Let's go ahead and test it. So line 61 in new purchase component, mapStateToProps. Line 61. What is the error here? Let's have a look. So we should have just said const. So let us test it now. So new purchase, there seems to be a design issue here. Let's just have a look. We did not define our class name for this. So let's define it. Class name is equal to form control. So we can select the fruit. We are getting all the fruits. Let's select on apple, and let's say enter a purchase quantity. We are not being able to enter the purchase quantity. Why? What is the error? So value should have been value. That's the error. So don't make these errors. Let's go ahead and test it. So we select apple. Let's enter the quantity as 5 and a new purchase. And once we go to stocks, we don't see anything in stocks here. Let's inspect on our Redux tools. So what does our state say? So it is empty. It did get an event, but it is empty. Why is it empty? Because we have not defined any reducer here. So let us now start defining a reducer for by. So that's what we need to do now. Let's go ahead and do that. If action dot type is equal to by, let's say we will just return by reducer, and we will just pass it the state and action. So let's now define this function. So const by reducer is equal to, it gets a state and an action as input. And what does it do? So what does this do? So this is a by. So let's define, say, const stocks comma purchases is equal to this dot state. These are the two things we need to update. So in the stocks, we will need to check whether this fruit is there or not. If it is there, we'll update it. Otherwise, we'll insert it. In purchases, what do we need to do? We will just need to insert it. So let's make these two changes. So let's first see whether the fruit exists in stocks or not. So let's say let st is equal to stocks dot find s such that s dot name is equal to action dot payload dot name. So we will find such a stock if st. So if st is truthy, then what do we need to do? We need to update. So how do we update it? We will spread the rest of it. We will use map and then update the JSON. So we can now say stocks dot map s goes to, so we will pick up a stock, s dot name is equal to action dot payload dot name. So if this name matches, which means we need to update. So let us spread the stock, and then what do we need to do? We need to update the quantity is s dot quantity plus action dot payload dot quantity. Else what it will be? We will just give the same. So this is our if st is truthy. Else what do we need to do? Else if st is not truthy, we can just say, and we will need to map it to something. So let's call it, say, stocks1. Stocks1 is we spread our stocks and then we just push our action dot payload. That's what we do. Now we want this stocks1 in both the cases. So let's just declare stocks1 before it as null and we reuse it here and here. So stocks1 has now the updated stocks. Similarly, we can say let purchases1 is equal to, we spread purchases and then we push action dot payload. And now we need to return the state. So what will it be? We will spread the state and then stocks is stocks1 and purchases is purchases1. So this is our by reducer. So this should work. Let's go back and test it. So let's do a new purchase. Apple quantity 5, new purchase. Cannot read property state of undefined. So instead of this dot state, what it should have been, we are passing it here. So this should have been state. Let's test it again. Apple 5 new purchase. So we get 5 apples in stocks. Let's do a new purchase. Let's again purchase maybe 12 apples. So this is now not getting added as numbers. So what's the problem? So here the quantity in our case. So we should have converted it into a number and added it. And in our first case, when we are sending it, so either we do it here, or a better option is that when we are in our purchase component sending it, we just send the plus quantity here. So let's test it now. So we send in apples, we buy 5, so we get 5. We buy apples again, maybe 12. And now we get 17. Let's buy, say, oranges, 22. And now let's say buy apples again, maybe 55. And this is now working absolutely fine. So now that we have implemented the new purchase component and the stocks component, let's implement the rest. So what all do we need? We need the orders component, the purchases component, and the new sale component. So let's start implementing the orders. So let's go to our stocks. Let me copy that. So here we will, what is the change here? Instead of showing stocks, we will get the orders from the Redux store and display it. So let's get the orders. So here in our mapStateToProps, we will get the orders from the store. Now let's display the orders. Order comma index. And what do we need to show? Order.name and order.quantity. Also this component, let's call it, say, orders component. And let's change that here. So this should work for us. So this is our orders component. Similarly, let's copy this and define our purchases component. So this would be purchases component. Here we need to display the purchases. So let's get that in mapState. And let's show our purchases. Say purchase comma index. So this should be purchases.map. So purchase comma index. And we display it here. In our orders component, we did not make this change. Let's do it. So be careful when you are copying code that you make all the changes. So we change the name of the component, we change the mapStateToProps, and we have changed what we are displaying here. So the purchases are visible, the stocks are visible, the orders are visible. Next, what do we need to implement? We need to implement the new sale component. So what should we do to implement our new sale component? Should we modify it from our new purchase component, or should we develop it on our own? So let's maybe pick up parts of the code from there. So we need to import it. Let's get so much in. So new sale component state we have. Then let's define just what do we need at the end of it. Let's maybe get those parts first, then we'll define the render. Let's put that in. So we need a sell action instead of a buy action. It will be called sell. The payload again is name and quantity, so this will work. Now what do we need in mapStateToProps? If we go and look at our reducer, we have fruits, we have stocks, we have orders, and we have purchases. So from the stocks only we will need to display our new sale component. Whatever is in stock will only display it. So let's get our stocks in state.stocks. So this should be fine. Next, what do we need to do? Let's maybe copy our functions. So what all do we need here? So let's call this function say cell, and this should just call the cell action. So rest would be same. So it will just call the cell action. The handle change will also be very similar. If we have name and quantity, let's make the form and then we will see it. Let's now copy the render and make changes to it. So in our render, what do we get from the props? We will get our stocks. From the form, we will get the name and the quantity. So this is a new sale. This is a form for a new sale. Now the fruit name here will come from our stocks. So what should we map it to? So instead of fruits.map, this should be stocks.map. And let's say st. And what is the value? st.name and st.name. So remember, stocks would have JSONs in it with the name and the quantity. So we are showing that. Next, for the quantity, let's also use a drop down. So because only the amount that's available in the stock will go in here. So let's maybe delete this part of the code and let's get this drop down in. We will modify this drop down here. So this would be quantity. Now what is its name? Its name is quantity. Its value is quantity. Now what do we want to show here? So select quantity, and we now need to show the quantity for this. So we will need to construct an array. And what should be the quantity? So suppose if the quantity was 4, we can choose 1, 2, 3 or 4. So we will need to generate it. So here let's generate an array. Let quantity options, let's call it, is an array. So it's an initial array. It's an empty array initially. Then we can say if name is truthy. So if we have selected the name in our drop down, then we can find out the quantity. How can we find out? We can say max quantity is equal to stocks dot find. What do we want to find? Stock such that st dot name is equal to name. That is what we want to find. So if name, let's define it, and what would be the quantity? Dot quantity, or we can just say let selected fruit is this. Now this would always be truthy, or why? Because we have selected name, otherwise name would have been empty. Or we can just say if selected fruit. So if we select the fruit, then what should be our maximum quantity? Let max quantity is equal to selected fruit dot quantity. So that is our quantity. Now in that array, we need to show values from 1 to max quantity. So let's push that. So we can say for let I is equal to 0, I is equal to 1. We want to show from 1, I less than equal to max quantity, I plus plus, and we can say quantity options dot push I. So we can push this value in. So we will now get that array, and we can now display that array here. So this will be quantity options dot map, and we are showing the quantity. The value will be quantity, and the display will again be the quantity. So whenever our name changes, this array will get regenerated and we will see it. On the button purchase, what should we call? We should call this dot sell, the function we defined. That was the name of our function, sell, and new sale. So this should be our component, new sale component. Now what else do we need to define? We need to define the reducer for it. So we define the reducer for buy. Similarly, we can say else if action dot type is equal to sell. So if that is our action, then let's say define a sell reducer with the state comma action. So that is what we can do. Now let's define our sell reducer. So const sell reducer is equal to state comma action. And what does it do? Now in the case of sell, what will we need to do? We will need to reduce the stocks, which means we will need to update the stocks. And if any of the stocks becomes 0, we'll need to remove it. So what do we need to do? Update stocks and remove if quantity is 0. That is the first thing we need to do. Second, we need to insert in orders. These are the two things we need to do. So let's start doing it. So let's first destructure. What all do we need? We need stocks and orders from state. Once we have gotten it, let's find the stock specific to this. So let st is equal to stocks dot find s such that s dot name is equal to action dot payload dot name. So we can get that stock. Now there can be two conditions. So if we find an st, then what do we need to do? We will update our st. So how can we update our st? We will use map. So we can just say let stocks1 is equal to stocks dot map stock such that, what do we do? If s dot name is equal to action dot payload dot name, then what do? We will just spread that item, and then what will we do? We will update its quantity. So s dot quantity is equal to s dot quantity minus action dot payload dot quantity. Else we just get that s. So this should have been quantity. So this is fine. So s stocks will be equal to this. So if we can get this here, so this is our, so s dot quantity minus action dot payload dot quantity. So we spread it, else we just get that s. So we have now gotten our. Next, what do we want to do? If the quantity has become 0, we need to remove it. So we can just use a filter. So we can say let stocks2 is equal to stocks1 dot filter s dot s such that s dot quantity is greater than 0. So that is the filter we will do. So we have now gotten our stocks. Similarly, what we need to do is update our orders. So we can say let orders1 is equal to, we spread the orders, and then at the end, what do we push in? Action dot payload. And now we can just return, we spread the state, and then stocks will be stocks2 and orders will be orders1. So this is what we return. And if st is not truthy, which means we did not find the stock, let's just return the state back. We do not update anything. So this is our cell reducer. So now that we have defined a reducer, we can go ahead and test it. Let's do that. So we get an unexpected token at line number 22. Let's look at it, line number 22. So what is the error? They should have been a colon, we made it equal to. So that was the error. Let's go ahead and test it. New purchase component is not defined. Let's look at this, line number 78. Most probably it looks like so this should have been a new sale component. Sales. Is that what we have defined? Let's look at our main component. So new sale, we should call it new sale. New sale. So now let's test it. Let's see. So stocks, there are no stocks, no orders, no purchases. Let's start with a new purchase. Let's purchase, say, 5 apples. So we have 5 apples. Orders nothing. We have 1 purchase. Let's do a new purchase. Let's purchase apples again, maybe 3. So now the stocks have become 8. There are no orders and we have these 2 purchases. Let's do another purchase, maybe banana, maybe 11. So that's the stock. The purchases are showing fine. Let's now do a new sale. Let's sell, say, maybe we can only sell banana or apple because those are the only products in stock. If we click on apple, we get the quantity we can sell from 1 to 8. Let's sell 1 apple. So now it's become 7 and 11. If we go to the orders, we get 1 order. Purchases remain the same. So here you can see nothing here. Now if I choose apple, we can sell 1 to 7. Let's sell all the apples. So now the stocks only have bananas. We have apple, we have purchases is fine. Let's now purchase apples, say maybe 10 apples. So now this is the stocks, orders no change, purchases we have that. Now if we want to sell apple, we can sell all of them. Let's sell maybe 6. So our stocks have become 4, our orders is this, our purchases are this. So this seems to be working absolutely fine. Next, what do we want to do? Modify the app to show all the components in a single dashboard. So we just want a single dashboard with all those 5 components to be shown. Let's see how do we do that. So we want to show now in a single screen, we want to show all these 5 components. So we will not use navbar, we will show all the components. So how can we show it? Let's maybe put a div class name is equal to row and then show all these 3 components within the, say, a column. The stocks, orders and purchases is column 4, let's say a border, and let's say a bg word. And what can we show within it? We can just render our, let's say, stocks component. Similarly, we can render our other 2 components. So the orders component and the purchases component. So these we have rendered. Now let's show our new sale and new purchase also. So let's maybe put another row in. Div class name is equal to row. And now within it, let's just put a and we show our, say, new sale component. Similarly, we show our new purchase component. So in some sense, we have constructed a dashboard and we then don't need the switch. We don't need this. This will show it to us. Now, what are the challenges that will come in here? In our stocks, there is no action, so nothing will happen, or in our orders. But in our new purchase component, we do a history.push whenever we do it. So this will not work because there are no props coming in. So what we can do here is this dot set state, and we can just put reset the form. So after we have dispatched it, we just reset the form, so the form becomes empty. Same thing we can do in our new sale component. Let's do that. So instead of saying this dot history dot push, we can just reset the state. This should have been form. Let's make that change. Form. Let's now test it and see. So now you can see we have those, because I have not done a complete refresh, we are getting the same state, the same store is working, and you can now see we have those 3 dashboards here, and we can now do a new purchase and a new sale. Let's do that. So in the new sale, what all can we sell? Banana and apple. So yes, banana. If I want to select quantity, I can select it till 11. Let me sell 3 bananas. So now my bananas have become 8. My form has gotten reset and this is working fine. Let's sell apples. So apples have gotten reduced and you can see they are getting there into the orders. Let's now buy, say, apples. Let's say 2 apples. So we have bought 2 apples, the quantity has become 2 and this is working fine. So this is like a single dashboard that we have created. And the most interesting thing is that we are just not passing any props here. So we have used the same framework and all the state is coming from the Redux store. So the same architecture we have used and we have done this kind of a display.